later that evening, beating sounds would drive me fucking nuts. Especially when I'm trying to sleep. It's like only thing I can sleep with is the television on. Anything else would go, I would just be like tearing at the house like I was Wolverine.
I'll tell you what, I don't care how annoying it was. I bet you I wouldn't leave my room. Wouldn't leave the bed.
But
No, no,
yeah,
no.
yeah, but
Mm-mm.
then it turned into like the rats, like it was rats in the room and they were gnawing at the bedpost.
You
So
can
do
have
you
the
really want?
bedpost. You don't know. You can have the bedpost. I'm in the bed. Uh-uh.
And then it turned into the bed sheets being pulled from you,
Oh
and the
God. Oh
pillow
God.
tossed on the floor.
So that's when it would be more difficult.
Yeah,
But only then. That ghost would have to put in a lot of work to get me to respond.
yeah. Then it got worse from there. Like even like worse. How? Start playing fucking songs all night.
This is a lot. It's a lot already.
Yes. As time went on, the bells began hearing faint and whispering voices, which were too weak to understand, but sounded like a feeble old woman singing hymns.
God.
The encounters escalated, and the Bell's youngest daughter, Betsy Bell, began experiencing brutal encounters with from the invisible entity. It would pull her hair and slap her
Oh.
relentlessly,
Oh.
often leaving welts and handprints on her face and body. The
Oh gosh.
disturbances about which John Bell had vowed his family to secret finally escalated to the point where he shared his family troubles with his closest friend and neighbor, James Johnston. Skeptical at first, Johnson and his family spent the night at the Bell home. Things began peacefully, but once they retired for the evening, they were subjected to the same terrifying disturbances that the Bells had been experiencing. After their bed covers were yanked off, James was slapped. He sprang out of bed,
Oh.
exclaiming, "In the name of the Lord, who are you and what do you want?" The entity did not respond. The rest of the night was peaceful. The next morning, Mr. Johnston explained to the Bells that the culprit was likely an evil spirit, the kind that the Bible talks about.
Oh gosh.
Then the entity's voice strengthened over time and it became loud and unmistakable. It sang hymns, quoted scriptures, carried on intelligent conversations, and once even quoted word for word two sermons that were preached at the same time on the same day, 13 miles apart.
Mm-hmm.
Word of the supernatural phenomenon soon spread outside the settlement, even to Nashville, where then Major General Andrew Jackson became interested in the so-called Bell Witch. Yeah, it started to get like, it started to escalate. It started to turn into this voice, this unmistakable voice.
Mm-hmm.
And like it starts like at this whisper, then it becomes this voice.
And it seemed to get stronger
Uh,
depending on how people reacted to it too.
mhm.
Maybe like even the more attention
Yeah, it was
that
given.
was paid to it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And how could you not, right? If you're I
right.
mean, it's I wouldn't get out of bed, but I would definitely, show that I hear the voice. That
Right.
I hear a little I would definitely show that I hear it. I just would be too scared to get out of bed. And
Mhm.
you're dealing with a lot of people. You're dealing with, now somebody whose opinion, I guess, about the issue is respected enough to be invited to the house.
Mhm.
And who probably thinks that he's gonna be able to figure this out. So that could be a negative interaction, or maybe what's the word, the ghost feeling that it was being questioned. I don't know. It seems like it went up the
Mhm.
more people tried to act against it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's also other weird things that was happening during that time too. Like John's son Drew Bell, he had was outside one day and saw this bird he didn't recognize. It was
Mm.
perched on a fence. It flew off, and he said it was the biggest bird he've ever seen.
Right, it was kind of a big bird.
Yeah, and his daughter Betsy, um,
Oh, little
observed a
Betsy.
girl who's been also being slapped around during this time. Like just picked up by an invisible person and no one does the scene. That's absolutely terrifying if this is true. I mean,
Poor Betsy.
slapped around. Yeah, she observed a girl in a green dress swinging from a limb of an oak tree.
But like a
And
limb, like
yeah,
it doesn't. I remember it didn't say that it was a swing that was made. It was just
right.
swinging. Like
Yeah,
that's it.
like she's just hanging on there like she's Batman and shit.
It's hilarious how interested these people seem to be because once again, I must say, me and my me and my
Mhm.
very positive blackness. If I saw a kid I didn't know swinging like that in a tree, I tell you what, I give it peace signs and I'd walk
Yeah,
away.
exactly.
Not
Like we're
not not
moving.
little old Betsy though.
Yeah, yeah.
Not any of
It's like,
these kids.
yeah, like Danny can't come do hell no.
No, I wouldn't.
Time you
I
be
wouldn't.
a yeah. I play that song they played in Mulan. You gotta be a man. It was like, yep, you gotta be a
Yeah,
man now. The house
not
is
my
yours.
choice.
See ya. Yeah, and Dean, um, the
Son.
person, the yes,
Oh no, Dean. No, I'm sorry, that's the
Dean.
son. Dean,
Yeah,
Dean, the enslaved individual.
the enslaved individual to the Bell's own, because again, this is 1920s, uh,
The
18,
night,
yeah, 1920,
I was
well,
going to the
1820s. Shit, they
1920s.
were both the same fucking time. God damn it. The 1820s Tennessee, and they're Southern and it's Tennessee, claimed that he was being followed by a large black dog on evenings he went to visit his wife, who was enslaved like him.
They were just owned by different people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I kind of don't give a fuck about this family. Go kill him, man. Kill him, ghost.
I mean, yeah.
Kill him, kill
Now,
him.
did Dean say he was? So I don't know if you read something additional
Yeah.
to Dean's interaction. Was he chased by this
Yeah,
dog, or was it was
there was
just
a couple of
behind him?
times he was a couple of times he was chased, but the first
Okay.
time, what report I had read, that he had said that this large black dog was following him on the first night, and then he went back a different night and it began chasing him,
Mm.
and he didn't know what. Like by the time he got to where his wife was staying, the dog disappeared.
Lucky Dean.
Yeah, yeah. Especially with that. But these, especially these reports, are starting to go outside of not only the home but also the county, and
Right, right.
it gets to the point of that a certain future at that time president gets to hear about it. So let's talk about that.
Womp womp.
Yeah. Like, oh god.
Yeah,
So John, yeah,
people involved in it. It's like, really,
yeah. It's
if
like
you're so interested, you go check it out.
yeah, like, and it's not exactly the night nicest people in the world. Like, there's people who, like, literally you go back in time and you want to shoot their balls off. It's just like it came to this man's desk and you're like,
Literally.
oh yeah. You're like, oh fuck. You're like, oh, there's a haunting going on and Donald Trump shows up.
Yikes.
Like it's the very best ghost, the number one ghost. You gotta take it out. But yeah, let's get to the story. John Bell Jr., along with his brother Drury and Jesse Bell, had fought under Andrew Jackson, General Andrew Jackson, in the Battle of New Orleans during the War of 1812. That part is true. They
Okay.
did fight under General Jackson, and the fact that he knew John Bell Jr., not personally, but knew of him.
Right.
John Bell Jr., the son.
Right.
A few years later, 1819, Jackson heard about the disturbances at the Bell home and decided to pay a visit and investigate. As Jackson's entourage, this is according to the story, consisted of several men, well-groomed horses, and a large wagon, approached the Bell property. The wagon jolted to a sudden stop, It became stuck in a muddy creek bed, and the horses were unable to pull it. At least that was what the men thought. After several minutes of cursing and trying to coax the horses by pulling the wagon, Jackson proclaimed, by the eternal boys, that must be the Bell Witch. But suddenly, a disembodied female voice told Jackson they could proceed and that she would see them again later that night.
I'll
Now
see
the
you in a minute.
voice, yeah,
I'll see you in a
like
minute.
I'll see you in a few minutes. Get a good meal going.
Oh God!
Like they're serving chicken. They're serving chicken tonight. You better eat
And
up. Like
these idiots, well, not idiots, like, but no, these idiots actually looking forward to seeing the witch stayed at the Bell House.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Not only are there some of them staying in the Bell House, they're also setting up tents outside of the Bell House. Now, remember when we told the story of the Devil House and Gary?
Yes.
Now, yeah. Now, imagine if I just brought a crew of like 20 guys. No, 30
in the
guys.
Devil House.
Yes, we're gonna stay in the Devil House, and some of
In
us
and
gonna
around.
in and around. We're gonna pitch tents outside. We're gonna carry rifles around, and we're like, we find this ghost, and we gonna catch him. That's the shit that they pulled.
And they had somebody with them. They had a witch layer.
Yes, we're gonna get to
known.
that.
Okay.
We're gonna get to
that. They brought their own friend.
They were then able to proceed across the property up to the lane in the Bell home. That evening, Jackson told old war stories while his entourage set up their tents in John and Lucy's yard. One of the men claimed to be a witch tamer. After several uneventful hours, he pulled out a shiny pistol and claimed that its silver bullet could kill any evil spirit that came in contact with. He went on to say that the reason nothing had happened to them was because whatever had been haunting the Bells was scared of his silver bullet. Immediately, the man screamed and began jerking his body in different directions, complaining he's being stuck with pins and beaten severely. A strong, swift kick to the man's posterior region from an invisible foot sent him out the door. Angry, the entity then spoke up and announced that there was yet another fraud in Jackson's party and that she would identify him the following evening. Jackson's men begged to leave the Bell farm. Jackson insisted on staying and wanted to know who the other fraud was. The men eventually went outside to sleep in their tents, but constantly begging Jackson to leave. What happened next is unclear, but Jackson's entourage were spotted in nearby Springfield the early next morning going back to Nashville. Someone later said Jackson later proclaimed, I would rather fight the British at New Orleans than fight the Bell Witch.
Goodness. And so at the end of all that, right? And I guess it's assumed that all of this is folklore, right? Because they said that at the end, there's no real evidence that this happened.
Yeah, there's no evidence that Andrew Jackson. There's evidence that John Bell Jr. and his brothers were under the command of Andrew Jackson during the Battle of New Orleans. There's evidence to point that John Bell Jr. met Andrew Jackson, but there's no evidence that states that Andrew Jackson had heard of the Bell Witch, came down to that region of Tennessee, or came down to the Bell farm. There's actual evidence of him being someplace else during that time.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Either it happened or it didn't, Either it happened or it didn't.
Yeah, it didn't happen.
And people were still, trying to push that it did happen, right? And stories that were later written and all that.
Right.
Relatives of the Bells writing stories and saying that, these stories were told to them by, the children who became adults.
Mm-hmm.
Betsy and other folks telling their family members about these things.
Yeah, but there's